evening. Kef LSX loudspeakers were introduced a few years ago now, but I thought it might be interesting to learn a little bit more about their design. So tonight I'm joined by Kef's Deputy Head of Acoustics, George Perkins. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Nice to be here.
George, you've got the title of Deputy Head of Acoustics at Kef. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about what that job involves.
I'm responsible for looking after the acoustic team and working together with the head of R&D, Jack Oakley-Brown, on defining the acoustic aspects of our products and following product briefs that come down from management and helping to turn them into products. And I guess you could say that the function of our department is that we're responsible for everything to do with the way Kef products sound. And my role in helping to look after the department is facilitating that goal.
The LSX speakers were introduced following on from the launch of the LS50 Wireless. Can you tell us what brought about the decision to manufacture these speakers, and when did you start work on the design?
Yes, you're right. LSX comes on the back of the LS50 Wireless, which was Kef's first really complete active music system. That is to say, the first to combine not just a great sounding active loudspeaker, which I think the LS50 certainly is, but also to have built-in network and internet streaming capabilities and comprehensive connectivity. And I think we had a good idea that this was the direction we wanted to head in eventually. But I think it's fair to say that the LS50 Wireless was a little bit of an experiment for us. We didn't know for sure that the market was ready. And frankly, we didn't know exactly the type of customer that this would appeal to. We had an idea. We know very well the traditional audiophile customer who is into their system building and will at all costs seek out the best sounding system that they are able to. But we kind of hoped that this would also have a broader appeal, maybe to people that are passionate about their music and enjoy spending quality time listening to music, but maybe aren't that keen on the whole system building, and they just really want a solution that fits in with their lifestyle. So that was kind of the intention, and we on the release of LS50 Wireless, we kind of waited and anticipated the response, and fortunately it was really positive. We got strong reviews in the press, and what was also nice to see was a little bit of a cult following developing organically, and the speaker was definitely a success with different groups of people as well. So I think at that point we knew we wanted to do more of these for sure. And in particular, we wanted to do something that went even more in the direction of being accessible with wider appeal.
Well, it's certainly a lifestyle product. Do you think it's one that appeals to all age groups and perhaps more specifically younger people?
I couldn't say for sure about the age demographics, but definitely appealing to people that are, often enthusiastic about tech, but normally would consider hi-fi to be a little bit aloof perhaps, or a little bit out of their familiar comfort zone. So yeah, certainly a broader appeal.
And price-wise as well, because it's, a pair of LSX are priced at £1,000, which is more affordable than the LS50s and building a complete hi-fi system from scratch.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the LSX is relatively affordable. I mean, £1,000 is still a lot of money, no doubt. But if you consider the tech that's bundled in there and the performance you're getting, and put this into the context of somebody trying to put together a really great sounding system, it's actually good value, and it is accessible certainly to a wider group.
Going back to the design, how long did the process take from start to finish once you'd gone past the idea of developing the LSX?
It followed on from the LS50 Wireless, which was 2016, I think, and LSX was 2018, so 2 years, but probably about a year of intensive development work. And that is partly because we wanted to gauge the response of LS50 before we began on LSX, but also because it was the same group of people developing both, and it was all hands on deck for the LS50 and then onto the LSX. The projects didn't run concurrently. So I think that the stages of development were, as in most cases, we get a kind of a brief or a wish list that comes down from our product managers about the type of product that they'd want, the price point they're trying to hit, and the features that they'd like to have. And then we in R&D try to come up with a proposal of an acoustic package in a sort of rough size and rough specification to kickstart work with the other teams. And so, yeah, we started off by doing some acoustic modeling, and the challenge on LSX is right from the beginning we knew that this thing was going to be pretty tiny. I've actually got one here. I can show you. There's not a lot of acoustic volume in there because we were really not trying to make like a little accessory speaker or a computer speaker. This was intended to be like a primary speaker for users to use as a hi-fi system. So we knew right away that we'd need to go for an unusual acoustic alignment. And so what we've done is gone for a very long port that gives a low system tuning. And if this was a passive speaker, that would be a very strange thing to do, because you would end up with a speaker that had loads of bass extension, but very little of that actual bass. It would be relatively inefficient bass. But we did this knowing that we were going to leverage the advantages of an active speaker technology to kind of bring up the level of the bass. So, but you need the extension there in the first place from the acoustic system. So that kind of formed the acoustic package, and we had a real head start because we're inheriting a lot of the features from LS50. So we already had an optimal driver placement, and we had some useful acoustic technology like the curved baffle, damped bracing, and that kind of thing. So that helped us start off quite rapidly. And from an early stage, we got other teams involved as well. So an active speaker is a complicated product that involves all sorts of different engineering teams' contributions. And one that was kicked off very early was the electronics development. Now, something I've come to appreciate from working on the LS50 and the LSX is that with an active speaker or an active music system, the amount of work that goes into the electronics, if you're developing all of this in-house, is pretty staggering. There's so much going on in there. Just starting with the amplifiers, I mean, you've got dedicated amplifiers for each driver, and they have to be really high-performing musical amplifiers because the user doesn't get a choice. It's not like they can swap these out. So they need to be really, really well executed from the start.
I think you use class D amplifiers. Is it 70 watts for the bass driver and 30 for the tweeter?
Yeah, exactly. And these are specified based on what we know the capability of the acoustic system is. And they had to be Class D just because of the sheer size of the product and the issues that we'd have dissipating heat if they were Class AB or a different amplifier type. So that was out of necessity, but they were carefully specified, carefully designed, with really carefully complementing electronics like the power supply, making sure that's adequate.
You talked about the bass on the speakers. The speakers have got a surprisingly good bass response for their size. How was this achieved?
They actually kick out some serious bass, and the reason is, like I said, we went for this low tuning frequency, and had in mind that we would leverage the active DSP combination to elevate the low frequency output, and to get something that's a little bit more like the classical response you'd expect from a much larger speaker. So with a passive loudspeaker, there is an inherent link between the amount of bass that you can get from the system and the size of the enclosure. There are little things that you can do to tweak this. You can use um, a slightly different alignment to get a different shape to the low frequency response. You can use ports or ABRs to take advantage of the sound coming off the back of the driver. But ultimately, there is definitely an intrinsic link between size of the cabinet, system efficiency, and bass extension.
And can you tell us more about the dynamic bass extension on the LSX?
So again, this is one of the key ways that we're able to achieve loads of bass out of something so small, and do it in a really controlled way. So active speakers give you opportunities to change the way you design the speaker, and do the acoustic alignment compared with a traditional passive speaker. But there is a little bit more to it than that. So firstly, you need suitably powerful amplifiers, and you need drivers that have much greater linear excursion than a conventional driver, and drivers that can also dissipate a lot of heat. So once you have these ingredients in place, you're able to effectively boost the low frequency range and get much more bass output than one would expect. But so I talk about kind of bending the rules, and it's definitely bending, not breaking, because there are still some constraints that you can't get around. And so for all the power that you can put into the system, at some point those speakers are going to hit their limit, or the amplifier is going to clip, or the whole thing is going to overheat. Something bad will happen. And you need to manage that. And what the goal is really to ensure that you have as much bass as you want to get out of the system at moderate levels, typical listening levels, but that the user is still able to turn up the speaker and it won't break. And so what you kind of have to do is dynamically change the amount of bass extension that you get by looking at the signal coming in, looking how loud it's playing back, and adjusting it so that the amount of bass is in line with the system capabilities. And that is done using a combination of limiters and compressors, and tools that are not new, but need to be combined very, very carefully to do the job in a way that has minimal audible effect. So So we're trying to get this dynamic characteristic of loads of bass at moderate levels, loads of output headroom, but that the user isn't able to hear the change associated with that in the speaker response. And it's as much an art as a science, I would say. Although that's probably doing a disservice to my colleagues who worked on the algorithms, because you do need to have a really good understanding of what it's doing and have good control over every aspect of the limiters and the algorithms. But you then need to go into the listening room and test out every case and make sure that it's catching transients adequately, so you don't get like a impulsive transient that gets through the limiter and bottoms out the speakers. But you also don't kind of go in too aggressively, so that like a classic situation with this sort of thing is a live recording that has a closely mic'd kick drum, and every time the kick drum kicks in, suddenly all of your bass drops out, and since this is a two-way speaker, all of your mid drops out as well. So getting a dynamic bass extension algorithm to work effectively and handle all of these cases is quite difficult, and took a lot of time for the first implementation, and was refined for the LSX.
And if you want more bass, perhaps if you want to watch movies, Kef recently introduced the Cube range of subwoofers, which have got 8, 10 and 12-inch drivers.
For most users, I think there's enough bass from the LSXs. They perform surprisingly well in this respect, but there are occasions where you want more. You want that extra octave, and quite often in people that listen to these in really, really large rooms or in home theater applications, they want a little bit more. And so, yeah, we've got a subwoofer output. And what's quite cool is that it's not just a tap coming off the input signal, whereby the subwoofer just kind of gets the same signal and has to fill in what the speaker can't naturally do. Rather, we've got a built-in crossover, which is user controllable. So you can base manage the system and redirect some of the very low frequencies and upper low frequencies to the subwoofer using a kind of a high pass on the LSX and a low pass on the subwoofer. And this means that you get better integration between the sub and the LSX, and you also get more headroom for the LSX because it's not working as hard, and so it can play louder and play cleaner.
And that's all controlled from the Kef app.
Yeah, the Kef control app is a really nifty thing, and on the surface of it, it is maybe like a remote control. It performs the same functions. You can turn the speakers on and off, switch sources, and control the volume and mute, that sort of thing. But it does a little bit more. When you first get the speakers out of the box, you can use the control app to very quickly take the pain out of getting these speakers onto your Wi-Fi network. So there's a little wizard built in that helps you with the onboarding, finding the speakers, connecting them up. And then there are also some advanced features on the Kef control app.
So the tonal balance is quite similar to the LS50s. I really like the mid-range transparency and the way the speakers image. So presumably you took some of the design elements from the LS50s, but how did you get them to sound as good as they do?
They share a lot of the same ingredients, and we had certainly the same target of performance in mind and same kind of sound signature that we've been developing. And this is all based around the goals of making speakers that are completely immersive for the listener and also completely natural and realistic, if you like. That's in a nutshell the Kef sound, or what we strive for. And I think a lot of it comes down to the UniQ, which is, for those of your audience not familiar with Kef products, it's a driver technology which we've been using for many years now and constantly improving. It's at a quite mature stage now, and what it is it's a coaxial driver, so two drivers in the space of one, and the tweeter is mounted at the acoustic center of the mid-range driver. And what that means is, if it's carefully designed, you're able to get a sound from the speaker that appears to come from a single point in space. And it isn't very easy to do that, and there are some technologies that help us to get it to perform the way we'd like to perform it. For example, there's a spherical dome that's been optimized to be ideal as an acoustic radiator and also strong mechanically, so that it can remain rigid up to very high frequencies. The tangerine waveguide helps to change the nature of the sound radiated from the dome into one that's more like an ideal pulsating sphere. And then little features to help get that sound from the tweeter out evenly into the room. So a smooth, uninterrupted surface of the mid-range cone and surround, extending out to the baffle. And all of these little things help to collectively allow us to get to that goal of a really, really transparent, clean upper mid-range, and ultimately a speaker that images really well and sounds completely natural.
And the tweeter in the middle, I think, is about 2 centimeters, and it's a point source, but it's also set back, and so there's some time alignment there as well.
It is all kind of highly optimized and carried over from the designs that we use in our high-end speakers. Again, I always like to have a prop, so I've got a driver which is very similar to the one that we have in LS50. This is a pretty substantial UniQ with a full-size 25mm dome tweeter and a mid-range with a pretty decent surround on it for good low and mid-frequency excursion. But if you take a look at the driver that's in the LSX, although it's much smaller, it shares a lot of the same features. And from the front, if you didn't have them next to each other to show you the scale, you'd be forgiven for thinking they're the same. So they've both got the same geometry of the dome cone surround that helps to get this like even well controlled wavefront propagating from the speakers. And they've got the tangerine waveguide and similar kind of oversized motor systems to help make them efficient. And so I'd say, in a way, for such a compact speaker, the LSX is probably over-engineered, and that's a result of carrying over so much technology from its bigger sibling, the LS50.
But that's good and can only add to the quality of the product. The speakers now are available in black with a fabric finish, and olive green with a fabric finish, and white with a gloss finish. You work with renowned designer Michael Young, who looked after the look and feel of the product. Why did you choose to work with somebody like Michael?
So number one priority for Kef is sound quality, always has been, always will be. But we know that these products are products that are going into people's homes and into people's lives. So it's so important that they are really, really, really well designed. More so with the LSX maybe than any other product, because as I mentioned, we're targeting people that maybe aren't willing to pursue the best possible sound at all costs. They also have in mind that this is a living space that they need to look good, and perhaps one that they share with other people. So from the beginning, the design was critically important. So we worked with a renowned designer, Michael Young, who helped to really kind of, although we were taking the overall package from the LS50, and a lot of that is sort of set, the details and the execution are where Michael Young added so much value. So coming up with the idea to use fabric instead of just painted wood or veneered wood is a really nice touch, and we've selected some really, really nice quality fabric, and the details around trims, beveled edges, the accessories, and all of that helps to turn these into something that could be a functional product into something that's quite beautiful.
You mentioned accessories. The LSX comes with a remote control, which gives you the functions of turning the speakers on and off, switching between the different inputs, and controlling the volume. But you've also got two apps, the Kef Control app, which effectively has the same functions as remote control, but is also used to set the loudspeakers up as well, and Kef Stream, which allows you to control your music and to connect to the various streaming services, Spotify Connect and Tidal.
Coming back to this idea that we know that these speakers are going to be used in people's living spaces, not their listening rooms, and they're not going to want to position the speakers at the expense of everything else in their room. They need to fit in. We know that they are potentially susceptible to problems with room boundaries. So when you put a speaker up against a wall, you get a kind of loading effect that alters the sound of the speaker. And left unchecked, this can be quite overpowering. So you can end up with something that's too bassy. You have similar problems if you're positioning the speakers on a desk or on a stand against a wall. The different ways that the speaker is positioned in the environment has a big effect on how they sound. So knowing that the LSX would be used, kind of chucked in to suit people's lifestyles rather than to suit the optimal acoustic situation, we wanted to build in some features to help make them more position agnostic. And so there are some quite easy to use but very effective room compensation EQ modes built into the control app. So a user is able to tap open the settings window and just put in a little bit of information about how they've positioned the speakers in their room, distance from the wall, the type of surface that it's on, and the speakers will then automatically compensate for the typical acoustic loading that you get in those situations. And so it's a very effective but easy to use way of getting good sound from any position.
And the speakers now come with some quite nice accessories. There's some loudspeaker stands which come in black and white, some wall brackets which come in black and silver, and some quite neat desk stands which enable you to mount your speakers so you can have them on your desk or perhaps a sideboard or some shelves.
Yeah, the accessories are, again, there's more accessories than we would normally offer for a specific product. And I think this is again trying to help with making these products into ones that can be easily integrated into people's lives. So we know that a lot of people will be using these on desks. So we offer the dedicated desk stands. And I really, really like these because they are substantial cast aluminium things that are quite attractive and cool in themselves. But as an acoustic engineer, they have one really useful feature, which is they angle the speakers slightly upwards. I think it's maybe 10 or 12 degrees. I can't recall exactly. But perhaps for people in your audience who are listening to this program, perhaps on speakers on a desk, they might be LSX or they might be something else. I would encourage them to try and see the effect of tilting speakers if they're on a desk. So slip a couple of paperback books under the front edge of the speaker so that it tilts slightly upwards, and you'll notice a tangible improvement if listening to music. And what's happening there is when you position speakers on a desk, what you get at the listener position is the sound that comes directly from the speaker to your ear. But you also get a very strong reflection off the desk. So the sound travels from the speaker down to the desk and bounces up to your ear. And because it's a longer path for the sound wave to take, it arrives at your ear slightly later. And so you get this sort of incoherent interaction between the sound waves that arrive at the ear. And this results in a kind of comb filtering of the response, and you end up with a quite compromised mid-range as a result. Just by angling the speaker upwards, you can reduce the magnitude of this reflected wave. So it's a simple tweak to get better sound from speakers mounted on a desk. And I really like that we've built this functionality into the desk stands.
And the speakers are designed to run wirelessly, so effectively being an active speaker, all you need to do is to just plug each speaker into the mains. But you get a better frequency response if you can link them via Ethernet. Is that right?
Very, very important for this project that we were able to get the speakers working wirelessly. That is to say, no inter-speaker connection cable. And that's because we know, again, keep banging on about it, we're reaching out to a wider audience and trying to make these blend seamlessly into people's lives. And that cable in between the two speakers can be really pesky. So we developed a wireless protocol for this purpose, a technology rather, and managed to get something that was working very robustly up to quite a high sample rate, and I think it is 48 kilohertz, and that is better than CD quality. So it's already high resolution working wirelessly, and so that is great. But we know that the DSPs are capable of running at a higher sample rate, and since the system allows it, it seems crazy not to offer the option of adding a cable and then running it at even higher resolution. So if a user connects the cable, they are able to run at 96 kilohertz 24-bit. What's quite cool, actually, a little interesting tip for you to try out maybe, is once you're in the control app, once the interspeaker cable is connected, you can actually toggle between the two modes, wireless and wired, and then you can hear for yourself if there is a difference, and how noticeable it is, and if it's worth the clutter of having the cable in place. So that's quite cool. And from what I've heard anecdotally, talking to people, I think it's about 50-50 split.
So Kef have been designing loudspeakers for as many years as I can remember. The active speakers with the LS50s and the LSXs have been around probably for about 4 or 5 years now. Presumably this is a technology that you're going to carry on developing and bring out other new products in the not too distant future.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can't comment on what products we have in the pipeline. I'd get into trouble if I did that. But I think I can safely say that this is a direction that we can see is going to be very important and a growing part of the market in future. And it's an area that we have cornered pretty effectively already. I think if you look at the products out there, the LS50 wireless and now the LSX are really, really competitive in this category.
Well, hopefully we'll get to talk again in the not too distant future about some new products. But in the meantime, George, thank you very much for joining us today. I very much appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure, Steve. Nice talking to you.
You'll find lots of reviews about the Kef LSX speakers online, but there's a particularly good one by John Darko, which you can see on his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to this on our website. If you'd like more information about the Kef LSX or the Kef LS50 wireless loudspeakers, please do take a look at our website, ultimate-stream.co.uk. I'm going to be taking a short break now for a holiday, but I'll be back in September for another set of Ultimate Stream live shows. Thank you for joining me. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.